Magical treats taste great, but justice and equality taste better. To combat hate, all ad revenue from my HB Kitchen will be donated to trans and LGBTQ charities. Thank you for supporting the kitchen and helping make the world a better place. Mischief managed.
Hello witches, wizards, and those who have just escaped from Azkaban. Welcome back to my Harry Potter Kitchen, the YouTube series where we're baking our way through the Harry Potter books, creating recipes for each and every item of food and drink that we find inside. If you missed last week's recipe where we brewed up an alcoholic version of pumpkin juice made with cloudy cider, then check out the link down below in the description to catch up. And if you're new to the kitchen and you want to see some more Harry Potter recipes, then make sure you hit that subscribe button, click on the notification bell, and you'll get an alert every Magic Monday when there's a brand new recipe. Speaking of which, we've got something new to try, so let's make some magic. Our next recipe can also be found in Chapter 6 of the Prisoner of Azkaban, Talons and Tea Leaves. Classes are continuing at Hogwarts and there's a bit of commotion during Hagrid's Care of Magical Creatures class as Malfoy has been acting up and the hippogriffs were having none of it. Harry, Ron and Hermione are slightly worried about what might happen to Hagrid when we see our next recipe, said Hermione anxiously, not touching her steak and kidney pudding. Eat up, Hermione. It'll make you all feel better. Steak and kidney pudding is on the menu, and back at the start of the series during the Philosopher's Stone, we made steak and kidney pie, but there is one distinct difference, and that is the type of pastry that is used in the traditional steak and kidney pudding. Instead, this time, we're going to use suet pastry, and don't worry, I'll walk you through the process of how to make that at home. Then we're going to fill it with our beautifully rich steak and kidney pie filling, which I'm going to walk you through step by step. First up, we do want to make that filling so it has enough time for our meat to go lovely and tender. So let's get cooking. To make your filling, you want to start off with your vegetable base, and for that, I'm peeling my red onion and then grating that so it's nice and fine in our gravy. I'm going to do the same with my carrot, so I'm going to peel that, chop off the ends, and then grate that through. The last ingredient for our base is the garlic, so I'm going to peel that through and crush it through a garlic press. Next, you want to place your pan or casserole dish on a medium heat, add in some olive oil and then pour in your vegetables. Keep on stirring those through over the next 5 minutes until they're nice and softened, and then you can remove them from the pan and place them to one side. Next, you want to prepare the steak and kidney. So for this, I'm just going to trim off any excess fat from the steak and then pop those to one side. You also want them to be roughly the same size, around 1 centimetre cubed. It's the same process for the kidneys, so you can chop them up and then place them into the same bowl as the steak. Next, I'm going to season the meat with salt, pepper, sprinkle over the flour, mixed herbs, and cinnamon. Want to toss that through until well combined. Using the same pan, add a little more oil and then add in the steak and kidneys in small batches, making sure it's not too crowded. You want to allow them to go golden on each side, turning every 1 minute, and then once you're happy, remove them from the pan and fry off the next batch. The base of my gravy is going to be made from beef stock. I've made mine with a stock cube, but you can use fresh if you have some available. I'm then going to top up my gravy with Guinness, which is a type of stout, but if you don't drink alcohol, then you can just add in some extra hot water. Add any excess flour from the meat into the bottom of the pan, and then slowly pour in the stock, stirring through as it begins to thicken. Once that's bubbling away, you can then flavour your gravy with some tomato puree, mustard, and soy sauce. At this point, you're ready to add back in all of your vegetables and the steak and kidney, and then top that off with some bay leaves. Stir through, place a lid on top, and then we're going to allow that to simmer on a very low heat for around an hour and a half. This will help tenderise the meat before it goes into the puddings. While your filling is stewing, you can move on to making the pastry, and as I mentioned at the start, steak and kidney pudding traditionally uses suet pastry, and you can use either vegetable or beef suet, whichever you prefer. It is super easy to make, and I'm going to walk you through. Just be careful not to overwork it, otherwise you'll get quite a tough pastry once it's all cooked. Once we have done that, I'm going to keep a little bit of that pastry back because I want to use it to add a little My Harry Potter Kitchen decoration on top, and I'm going to use poppy seeds to create my decoration. Making the suet pastry is super easy. All you want to do is add your flour into a bowl along with the suet. Add in some salt to taste and your baking powder. Stir that through and then make a well in the middle before pouring in your cold water. Use a knife to bring that together into a soft dough. Turn it out onto your work surface and then knead lightly until it comes together. This won't go as smooth as your typical pastry, so don't feel like you have to keep on kneading it. You want to go for around 1 to 2 minutes, and then once it's just about formed together into a smooth ball, stop kneading. For our lightning bolt topping, I've cut off a piece of the pastry and then kneaded in some extra poppy seeds, which are going to give a lovely hint of flavour and some distinct colour on top. Roll that out to about 1/2 centimetre thick. Cut out some lightning bolt shapes, either using a stencil or freehand. Next, you want to grease your ramekin or baking dish very generously to make sure your puddings don't stick, and then add in your lightning bolts to the bottom. Remember, you have to place them in reverse so that they turn out the right way. Divide the rest of the suet pastry into 4, and then I'm going to roll that out to about 1/2 centimetre thick as well. Carefully pop those into each of the ramekins, being careful to try and press out any air bubbles and then smooth them into place. Remember, it is pastry, so you can stretch it along the sides to help fit it in. Cut off any excess and then keep on working until all of your ramekins are lined. At this point, your filling should be bubbling away, so you can check on that and give it a good stir through. You want it to be quite a thick gravy so we don't get a soggy bottom, so if it's too thick, add in some extra water, or if it's too thin, leave the lid off so some of the water can evaporate. Once you're happy, remove from the heat and then generously fill each of your pastry cases. I'm then taking the remainder of the pastry and cutting out some circles to act as our lid. Remember, this will flip over to be the bottom, so you want to make sure you get a good seal. Use some cold water to wet the edges of the pastry and then press your circles on top. Work your way around the edges to make sure it's nice and sealed. This recipe is enough to make one large steak and kidney pudding, or you can make some individual ones if you're having a little fancy dinner party. Now, you can cook these on the stove, but I prefer to use a slow cooker as it will give you a much better control over the temperature. Whichever you prefer, make sure you place something at the bottom so the tops or bottom of our steak and kidney puddings don't burn while they're steaming, and then all you need to do once it's cooked is flip them out and enjoy. I'm then going to cover these with some baking paper, and I've double lined mine while also folding them over in diagonals so it has enough room to expand. To tie them down, I've used an elastic band to hold the paper in place while I tie some string around. Now, we don't want the baking paper to touch the water as it steams, so I've trimmed off any excess baking paper just under the string. To prepare your slow cooker, you want to place a tea towel into the bottom and then carefully place your ramekins in. Boil your kettle and then slowly pour down the side. Remember, try to avoid getting any of the water on top of the baking paper. Keep on filling until it's about halfway up the ramekins. At this point, you can place your lid on top and allow that to steam for 2 to 2.5 hours. The important thing here is to try not to lift off that lid, otherwise all of the steam will escape and it will take a little longer to cook. It's typically better to try and overcook this one, as the worst thing that could happen here is that you undercook your pastry, as you only get one chance to turn it out. If it is underdone, it could be soggy and then it could tear and ooze all of your filling over the dinner table. So if you're not sure, leave it in for an extra 15 minutes and then you can test it once it comes out. Cut off the string, Peel back the baking paper, and the pastry on top should not be translucent at all. You can also stick a skewer in to make sure that it's cooked through. Leave the steak and kidney puddings in the ramekins for about 5 minutes before you turn them out. The easiest way to do this is take a palette knife and gently wiggle it around the edges to help release it. Place a plate on top and then flip over. Wiggle the ramekin to loosen it a little and it should pop straight out. And with that, our Harry Potter inspired steak and kidney puddings are ready to serve. Take them to the table, cut in and watch as your rich steak and kidney filling oozes out. And voila, a little reward for all of your patience while that beautiful smell was filling your kitchen. This steak and kidney pudding is irresistible, so let me know down below in the comments if you're going to give it a go. That's all for this week's recipe, but if you want to see more from my Harry Potter kitchen, then make sure you hit that subscribe button, click on the notification bell, then you'll get an alert next Monday when there is a brand new recipe. I'm off to have my pudding, which is actually dinner, and I'll see you next time.